Hey, welcome back to another week here at Calvary. We are so excited for what God is going to do today. Today, we have an amazing treat. We have Pastor Galen Woodward all the way from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Pastor Galen and his wife, Kay, are the apostolic oversight pastors at Citizen Church in Albuquerque. It's a thriving church. God is doing amazing things there, and he has an amazing message for us in our second part of our relationship series. Grab your Bibles, grab your notebooks, and let's lean in to what God has for us this morning.
Hey, yeah, you may have a seat. Good morning. It is so good to be with you. Love your pastors. They are amazing people. And, the first time I met them 2 years ago, I knew immediately I wanted to just hang out with them. And they were leaders, they were influencers, and we have just become the best of friends. And I can truly say, out of 40 years of ministry, that they are some of our favorite friends in ministry today, and you guys are highly, highly blessed by having them as leaders. The other thing that I love is just hanging out with them. They talk about how much they love you, and I can certainly understand that. Walking in this morning, this place is a place of excellence, a place of love, a place of care. You guys have created an amazing atmosphere, and I would come to church here every single week if I could. You are amazing. I just want to come off the stage and hug every one of you. That's how I feel this morning. But hey, again, I was here 2 years ago. Guys, this place has transformed. You have doubled in size in 2 years. Driving in this new addition, guys, that is epic. You don't have to do anything else. Just leave it like it is. And it's a statement to the community. Man, Calvary is going somewhere. So it is really, really exciting. And I love that. So again, to Benny and Kelly, what amazing godly leaders they are. And they are leading in a powerful, powerful way. Well, recently I have written a book called A Matter of Time. It's on parenting. And Benny called me and asked if I would come and be a part of this relationship series. I jumped at the chance because it's one of my favorite topics in talking about family, talking about children. And we are living in bizarre times. In fact, they are challenging times when it comes to our children and our grandchildren. And no longer, and this is what I write in the book, no longer do we have the ability to say that we're raising our kids. We have to change our mindset to we are raising leaders. And the children around our feet running around, we need to begin to see them as future leaders, and that I am with intentionality, that I am pouring into them, how to do that. So this is what this book is about. I have written 5 character traits in this book that I believe that when our children walk out at 18 to go out into the world, that they will have a foundation that is unshakable. Guys, one of the reasons why I wrote this book, and this is what rattled me, is that 75% of our church kids who are in church every single week, raised in Christian homes, when our kids graduate at 18, go to a secular university, they are saying that 75% of them are walking away from the church and walking away from God. And that cannot keep happening, and that we have to stop that. And so again, in this book, 5 character traits, I put 5 biblical stories to those traits of where you can take these 5 stories and tell them to your children from the time they're 2 till the time they're 18. And I believe that it will build a foundation that there is not a university and there's not a university professor that can pull them away from their faith. And so we are raising leaders, and we're going to raise those that will lead in the next generation and in their culture in which they live. Guys, I'm going to speak on a topic today, and I'm pulling it from this book, one of the character traits. I've chosen one that will include all of us. So if you are single, if you're a teenager, if you're married, if you're not married, this is going to incorporate all of us today and not just isolate to parents. But if you are a parent, this can be life-changing. And I never like to speak on just a topic that we throw out the Word of God and then walk away. But what my prayer is today is that this topic will go with you for the rest of your life. My prayer is that as you sit on the edge of your seat and you listen to every word, that it will change your life, but most of all, it will change the atmosphere of the home in which you live in. So today I have chosen the topic, and I have called it the lost character trait, honor. I think all of us are very aware that we live in a culture of dishonor. Every day on talk radio, cable network, social media, there are attacks, slander, character assassinations. Somehow, in a very short amount of time, we have justified hating anyone that we disagree with. And our children are standing by, and they're listening, they're watching, and they're effectively learning that they too can dishonor anyone in authority over them as long as they disagree with them or dislike them. The reason why that honor has disappeared from our culture is because we have prioritized individualism. In other words, we have prioritized meism. It's all about me. It's all about me. And anytime that a society focuses on self more than the overall good of the people, it's the crumbling of society, and it's exactly what we're watching today. When I was writing this chapter on honor, every Sunday morning after our services, I would walk out into our atrium, and I would just pick a random person and say, hey, can you help me out? I'm writing on the topic of honor, and I want to ask you a question. Can you tell me who deserves honor and who does not deserve honor? Every person I asked, it was the same response. They put their head down, they shuffled their feet, they stumbled over their words, and they could not answer the question. Who deserves honor and who does not deserve honor? This morning I want to ask you a question. Who stands out in your mind above anyone else in your past? Who is the person that stands out and today you remember their name? Let me tell you who you probably don't remember. You probably don't remember the names of the past 5 Miss Americas. You probably don't remember the names of the past 5 Academy Award winners. And you probably don't remember even the names of the most valuable players in the NFL. And isn't it remarkable that we forget the names of those who have done remarkable things in life, and yet we forget so quickly? But let me tell you who you do remember. You remember the person who helped you in a time of need. You remember the name of the person who led you to Christ. You remember the name of the person that believed in you when no one else did. And the reason why is because honor is so powerful. Honor is so impactful that when someone honors you, that deed and that name will never be forgotten. If honor is that potent, then I wanted to understand more about it biblically. And in Matthew chapter 20 and verse 28, it says the Son of Man, of course, talking about Jesus, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Now, serving and honoring are synonymous. It's the same word, means the same thing. It's when we find worth and value in another. Now, also, I want to understand biblically who we are to honor. And it lists in the Bible 10 different people groups. I want you to look at this. We are to honor one another, our parents, our children, our wives. We are to honor husbands, the elderly, widows. We are to honor elders, pastors, bosses, and the emperor. Now, I want you to notice that out of these 10 groupings, it is a command that these are the people that we are to honor. There's no ifs, ands, or buts tied to it. There are no escape clauses. It's just honor these people no matter what. Now, Peter addresses honor in one of his teachings. And in 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 17, it says, show proper respect to everyone, love the family of believers, fear God, honor the emperor. Now look at this again. Show respect to everyone, love fellow believers, fear God, and then there's this last phrase, honor the emperor. When you look at it, it feels like it's out of step, out of place, randomly thrown in there, But it wasn't random. It was something that was highly intentional that Peter was saying, I want you to understand what I'm saying. Let me give you the historical background of Nero. Nero was a twisted, perverted madman, that his mission was to kill as many Christians as he could, putting hundreds and thousands to death, but not only killing them, but putting them through tremendous torture before their death. It's unimaginable to think that Peter would stand in front of the church, like I'm standing in front of you, and say, honor the emperor. While you're sitting there and your own mother had been dragged out of her house for no other reason but declaring Jesus Christ is Lord and God. And they beat her, and then they throw her on a wooden cross, nail her to the cross, and they pour hot tar all over her body. Then they lift up the cross, set it on fire to light one of Nero's drunken parties. Unimaginable. It's still today, in 2024, it's still unimaginable, and it's absurd to honor someone like that. We as a nation, we are about to go back into another presidential election. We all are highly aware that it's more polarizing than it's ever been before. And what Peter was saying is it doesn't matter who the leader of the nation is. It doesn't matter if it's President Bush, President Obama, President Trump, President Biden, that we are to honor them, not speak evil against them. But here's the biblical tension, is that we are to honor them, and yet you have the right to disagree. You have the right to strongly disagree with their decisions and their policies and their moral beliefs. Be careful not to speak evil against a leader. You know, Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. There's something so special to me about Thanksgiving. It's when you gather family and friends, you gather around a large table, and before you is a feast of food like we have no other time in the year. The people sitting at that table are the people you love more than anyone else in the world. But you know, what I have found is that almost every family has that crazy Uncle Larry in the home. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, and he's sitting at the table, and everyone's having such a great time, great conversation, and then he's got to start in on all of his crazy political ideas. And over time, it quickly becomes heated. Emotions become inflamed. And this is what Peter was saying. Be careful. Anger and hating and defaming is the culture of the world, but it is not the culture of the believer. So here's the biblical mandate when it comes to honor. We are to honor all people, regardless of their behavior. Guys, that's a hard pill to swallow. Because what we want to say is, I would honor my father if he deserved to be honored. I would honor my mother if she would ever come back and apologize for what she did to me when I was a child. Maybe then I could show honor, but not until. But you need to remember the person standing in front of you. They may be anti-God, anti-church, anti-religion, anti-everything that you stand for, and you have no respect whatsoever for that individual. It's at that moment we have to shift from physical eyes to spiritual eyes and realize the person that's standing in front of me has been formed, designed, created in the image of God. And when God created them, He said, and I stamped them and I crowned them with glory and honor, meaning they are the crown jewel of my creation. You see, we honor all because we have the understanding that we look beyond bad behavior to one who was knitted together in their mother's womb, who is fearfully and wonderfully made. And what we do is we value what God values, and we see in others what others do not see. My son and his family moved to Washington, D.C. 2 years ago to plant a church. They were on our staff in Albuquerque for many, many years. And now they're in D.C., and Kay and I, we're going there to see our 3 grandkids as often as we can. What we love about D.C. is there's so many wonderful things to see and to visit. And as we're walking the streets of D.C., we'll come to the metro sign, and then we'll go to catch the metro, and we'll go down the long flight of stairs to the underground, and where there are sidewalks that lead to the different trains. What I've noticed that as you descend down to the underground, many times there are the homeless, those that are begging for money. But also I have found many times there will be those that will bring an instrument, and they'll pull it out of its case and put the music case down in front of them, and they'll start playing a saxophone, a guitar, whatever it may be, and they're hoping that as you walk by, you'll throw a few coins in the music case. Not very long ago, there was a man who went down into the metro, opened up a violin case, pulled out the violin, left the case out in front of him, and he started playing for the next hour and a half. The beautiful music echoed and reverberated through those concrete walls and through all the hallways. And as people were walking by, that there would be a child that would be captivated by the music and stop, then they are quickly pulled on by their parent. Others would pause for a moment and listen and keep on moving. Some would even throw a few coins into the music case as they walked by. But that man that day was no beggar, but he was the renowned musician Joshua Bell. The violin that he played in the metro that day was worth $3.5 million. 2 days before, he played in the Boston Theater, packed out house. In ticket sales, he brought in more than $500,000. At the end of that concert, it had been so beautiful that the people stood to their feet, and it was a standing ovation, and they continued to applaud and applaud and applaud until Joshua Bell came back out and he played one more song. But on this day in the metro, when he finished, he put his violin away, he collected a mere $32 out of that music case, snapped it shut, and he walked out. No standing ovation, no applause. No one had noticed. No one recognized him. No one valued the incredible music that had been played there that day. That same scenario plays out in our lives every single day on the sidewalk of life. As we pass hundreds of people, even the lowest of the low, and as we pass by, so often we don't notice, we don't recognize, and we don't value the seed of greatness that God has placed inside of every human, every person, and realizing they have been created in the image of God, that they are the crown jewel of all creation. You see, what we do not respect, we do not honor. Now, the Apostle Paul speaks to parents. If you're a parent, I want you to listen to this because this is absolutely life-changing. What he does is he lays out 2 aspects of leadership development for our children. If you want to know how to develop leaders, then he lays it out for us. It seems like every time I hear someone speak on parenting, they always go to Ephesians chapter 6. And this is what it says. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. Now, I don't know if I have ever heard, as many times as I've heard this taught, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone speak of its fullness. Because every single time we focus on obey your parents, for this is right in the Lord. But there are 2 words that are attached to this. The words are to obey, it's obedience, and honor. You see, most parents understand obedience. We know how to teach it, that we know how important it is, that our kids need to learn to obey what we say. But rarely do parents teach honor because we do not understand it. Let me give you the definition of obedience. Obedience is an act of the will. It's when we are told to do something, we may not feel like doing it, but we force ourselves to do it. It's an act of the will. It's doing what someone says. It's following directions. How often have we seen this play out in our homes? Where you have kids that are walking through the house and they're passing by bedrooms with beds unmade. They're stepping over dirty clothes laying on the floor. They walk into the kitchen and they pass by the sink and it's filled with dirty dishes. And as they pass by all of these things, they're saying, it's not my job, it's not my responsibility, nobody told me to do it. And you know what? They're absolutely right if they have been solely taught obedience. But honor, oh, it's different. Honor adds a deeper dimension to every relationship that we have. Here's the definition of honor. It's not an act of the will, but it's an act of the heart. It's doing more than what is expected. It's treating people special. Going back to the scenario in the house, if honor has been taught and it's becoming caught, from time to time, your teenager will walk through the house and pass by a bedroom that is not their own, but step in and make the bed. That they will, from time to time, stop and pick up dirty clothes that are not their own. They'll stop by the kitchen and see all the dirty dishes and think someone in our house will have to do the dishes. And it probably will be my mother. And so they pause long enough to do the dishes for no other reason but to bless a family member. And honor begins to change the atmosphere of every home. You see, obedience focuses on a task. Honor focuses on people. Obedience is doing a job, but honor is blessing others. Let me give you a couple of easy ideas how to implement honor into your home. Have you ever experienced anything like this? When I was a father and our kids were teenagers, I would come home from work, been gone for 8 hours, driving into the driveway, walking to the front door, one of the best feelings of the day, I'm finally home. Walk in the door and you start passing by family members. One is watching television on the couch. Another one is at the dining room table doing homework. Another one is playing videos. And as I am walking by, I barely get a grunt out of anyone. And I wonder, does anyone even care that I'm home? Well, this is one thing that I do know. We've got a little dog, Dixie. And when I walk in the door, the moment she hears that door crack open, it doesn't matter where she's at in the house, she comes bolting to that front door, leaping and jumping and barking and so excited that I'm home. Can't help myself to kneel down and to rub her head and talk to her. And, you know, it makes me feel so good. So good. But, you know, dogs can overdo it because a few minutes later, I can grab a sack of trash and I take it out to the driveway and throw it into the dumpster. And I've only been gone for a few minutes, and when I open the door, it's the whole scene all over again. She comes leaping and jumping and barking, so excited that I've walked in. But what if, in our homes, we set a standard that we learned from the family dog, and we call it the canine principle, and where we just set a new rule in the house. This is our new rule, that when someone has been gone all day long, they've been at work all day, school all day, that when they walk in the front door, it doesn't matter what we're doing. We take a 30-second break from homework, from watching the television, and we go and meet them at the front door and just throw our arms open and say, Dad, glad you're home. Mom, man, missed you today. I hope you had a great day. And then everyone goes back to what they were doing. Now, if you try to implement this and you have teenagers in the house, they're going to make this awkward because that's what they do. They make everything awkward. They're going to roll their eyes. They're going to get up from the television and shuffle themselves to the front door. Dad, give me a hug so I can go back to watching television again. And they'll make it silly. But you know what? Just keep it going. Keep it going. And when it becomes a habit, there is a mentality shift that it starts ripping the me mentality out of all of us, and it begins to focus on other people. It's an amazing process of what honor does. Now, here's another easy way to apply honor into the house. Some of you have already done this. It's creating a family mission statement of where you think through it, write it out, you frame it, you post it, and family members read it often. Let me show you our family mission statement and what it says. It says, we believe being a Woodward is special. We're not just out for ourselves. We work as a team. When a job needs to be done, the Woodward team pulls together. We work hard to clean up the house, to do yard work, to share in any need and responsibilities because we are a team. What our family knows is that there is a standard of identity that has been set and that we are a team and we function as a team. In our home, name-calling, belittling, agitating, hitting, screaming, not permitted because it's a violation of the standard of who we are. And moms and dads say it often and say it clearly that in our house, we respect and we honor one another. And parents don't ever fall into the deception of thinking that my kids will eventually grow out of their negative behavior, because that does not happen. But they will grow deeper entrenched in negative behavior, and they will take it into adulthood and into their marriages and into their children's lives. Our children need to be taught to be second-mile people. And let me explain what I mean by that. In ancient Rome, one of the great marvels of Rome was their road systems. They had over 50,000 miles of roads. Anytime they would conquer a new city, a new territory, immediately they would build roads from that city all the way back to Rome. Today, when we hear the phrase, all roads lead to Rome, it was reality. All roads led to Rome. These roads were sophisticated. Every mile there was a tall white stone that indicated how far you had traveled and how far it was to the next city. Now, during the time of Christ, the Romans had put together a new law, and the law was that if you were a Roman citizen traveling on a road, you had the right to ask a non-citizen to carry your heavy backpack, your heavy load for 1 mile, but 1 mile only. The Jewish people despised this. I mean, they hated this because every time they got out to travel, a Roman would ask them to carry their backpack. Now they had all of their own luggage, and they had to put on their backpack and carry it for the next mile. And when they got to that mile marker, they would drop it in the dust and they would walk away humiliated by that experience. Despised it. And Jesus' most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount, thousands of people gathered on the hillside. He addressed this Roman law. In Matthew 5 and verse 41, as he spoke, he said, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Now, Jesus is talking to them about the thing that they hate, that they despise, that they're humiliated by, and Jesus is saying, do it. Do it. And then offer to go 1 more mile. You know what Jesus was doing? He was saying, for my followers, we have a different mindset that sets us apart from everyone else. And what he was teaching them is that when you begin to do what no one else does, you become a standout in the crowd. All eyes begin to focus on you. You are different from everyone else. You are rare and you become attractive, and everyone wants to know, why are you the way that you are? And it gives you a platform of leadership and influence among every group of people you are around. You see, the first mile is just a mile of obedience. The second mile is the mile of honor. The first mile is the action of common people. But the second mile is the action of a rare few. Remember when I told you in the beginning of this that there were 5 character traits that I wrote about, and there was a Bible story attached to each one? Here's the Bible story attached to honor. In 1 Samuel, David had just killed Goliath, and it threw him into instant fame. I mean, a national hero. They paraded him into Jerusalem, and as he came down the streets, people were singing his praises, singing about David. Champion, warrior, none like David. King Saul was so thrilled that the giant had been destroyed that he invited David to come and to live in the palace with he and his family. And everything was great for a while. But when Saul began to realize the people of the nation loved David more than they loved him, they sang more about David than they sang about King Saul. Jealousy began to rise up. It became a rage, and where on 2 different occasions he tried to kill David. Finally, he ran David out of the kingdom, chasing after him. David ran for his life, ran into the wilderness, was hiding in the wilderness, and Saul sent some of his soldiers after him, saying, when you find him, kill him at first sight, destroy him as soon as you find him. Highly abusive. Now, King Saul, sometime later, had to go into battle with against the Philistines. The battle took place on Mount Gilboa, and he stands at the top of the hill and he's watching the battle below. And he's watching as the Philistines are advancing upon the Israelites. And they keep advancing, and they're slaughtering the Israelites. And as they're coming up the hill, Saul sees his sons down below him, swords drawn, and when the Philistines come upon them, they fight with all of their might, but Saul watches each of his sons die before his eyes. At that moment, King Saul is struck by an arrow, falls to the ground, knows that he cannot escape. And that day, King Saul and his sons died on that hill. Immediately, the word went back to Jerusalem that their king and his sons have all been killed. There is no leadership, and everyone panicked. And they thought maybe the Philistines are going to come upon us. And they started picking up just belongings and running for their lives. It was chaos in the kingdom. Running for their lives. In the kingdom, there was a 5-year-old boy named Mephibosheth. He was the grandson of King Saul. The nursemaid was taking care of him that day, and she scooped him up in her arms, and she started running with everyone else. And as she was running down those stone steps, she tripped and fell with him. And when she fell, the crowd behind her trampled them, and the little boy was so badly injured that he would never walk again. Now many years pass by, and David becomes the new king of Israel. One day, as he's just reminiscing, thinking about that he was here so many years ago, so many memories, and all of a sudden, he thought, whatever happened to the 5-year-old boy, King Saul's grandson, Mephibosheth? He started inquiring, and it seemed like no one knew what had happened to him, but a few days later, someone came back and said, we found him. He lives in a place called Lodabar, which means the lowest of the low. And it was the most poverty-stricken area in Israel. Here, he's a grown man, crippled, and lost everything in life. Lost his future kingship, his inheritance, his land, his health. He had nothing in life. And David summoned him to the palace. David's men went to Lodabar and scooped him up and carried him all the way to the palace. Walked in and laid him on the floor before the throne of David. Mephibosheth, this young man, is shivering, he's quivering, and It's all in fear because he knows that he's about to be executed. That David is going to take his life to finally end the family line of King Saul, who had been so abusive to David. As he's trembling in fear, knowing this is it, David slowly rises out of the throne. He steps forward and he says to him, Mephibosheth, don't fear. I honor you today because I honor your grandfather, King Saul. And I want you to know that I'm going to restore everything that you have lost. In fact, from this day forward, you will eat at the king's table. You will eat at my side for the rest of your life. Wow, what a story. To sit down on the side of your child's bed and to tell them this story and then say, and who's your Mephibosheth? Who is it at school that sits off in the cafeteria by themselves? Who is the one that everyone makes fun of and they call them names and they're always alone? Who's your Mephibosheth? And by simply seeing what no one else sees, understanding what no one else understands, you can say to your child that what you know is that they have been created and formed by the hand of God. And there is a seed of greatness inside of them. And by your kindness, you can restore everything that they have lost. You see, the power of God's word changes everything. This simple biblical principle of honor changes everything. Because it's simple that we just see people through the eyes of Christ. I'd like to ask everyone to bow your heads.
Wow, what an amazing message today, man. Pastor Galen hit it on the head with honor. Honor is such a big deal. I love how God just is building on this relationship series. And speaking of him building, if you didn't catch last week's message from Pastor Sean on forgiveness, you got to go back and check that out. You can find all of these things, or if you just want to connect with us, you can go to calvarymd.com and look it out, look us up. But let's just be faithful in honoring people all week. God bless you and have an amazing week.